Tell that to the cabs. Alright, this is another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series, and this is another expert lesson to show you the fakery of the fairy tale Roman Testament and the so-called Son of God, or you might prefer the Son God, Jesus or Yahushai. This is August 22nd, 2017. This lesson is called Proselytes of the Jesus Religion. I know when you deal with proselyte, you're talking about someone who has made some kind of change or conversion to another thought or religion, something like that, right? So I'm going to show here that all the people who are teaching that this Roman Messiah is a Messiah sent by God from the tribe of Judah to die for the transgressions of Israel is that all these people are wrong. Their teachings are incorrect. I want to read here from Deuteronomy chapter 28. And the Most High shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now let's run down. So, and of course we know that happened. They came as slaves. Go down now in the chapter to verse 36. The Most High shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. And you know, we always say stone is the Kaaba stone from so-called outer space that's in Islam, and the wood is the cross of Christianity. I'm dealing with the wood. Christianity, the Jesus hanging up on the cross, or Yahushai. Here is the problem with this New Testament teaching that wrong people love to teach, is that he says when you get there in these slave lands, you are going to worship the wood, in this case the wood for Christianity. So you're going to worship this Jesus. And since you know that Jesus was crucified using this wood, and he continues to be carved on wood even to this day, and they sell them in Christian bookstores and so on. And again, I just saw some Bible cases recently made out of wood, thin wood, and Holy Bible is carved in it, and Jesus is carved on it as well. And you know, it looks nice, of course, you know, it's people's artwork, but it's just showing you he died on wood because you're carving him on that cross. Now, if the person who knows the Torah is thinking straight, meaning you're not leaning on deception anymore. And let me make a note about that. Because you see, I have a lesson I have to take down from online. I think it's on YouTube. When I just started using, recently, probably last month or so, what would you say now? I made it public because it was listed as not public, private or something like that. It was from the early days when I just started YouTube. I had a different channel, which is still up. It's got a few videos on it still about Halloween and so on. Very, very good teaching and so on. But they all had Jesus stuff because that was when I was just starting out. I didn't know how to use YouTube very well. And at that time, I also believed in Jesus. And once I got out of the Jesus stuff, I made this new channel, Yalak Emet, because I had some problems with the other channel. I didn't like it, whatever, so I just made up a new channel. And then I realized now that I had this video on YouTube that was shown as private. And with the little views I get, that's growing slowly. I realized that one just stayed at 0, and it's been probably online for 3 years. It never got 1 view. And I just finally realized it's because it was listed as private. I never realized it all along. So I put it as public. But listening to it now, because it's been so long, I realized I was talking about Jesus, Jesus, Jesus all throughout, from the start to the finish. I sounded just like those initial people that were teaching about Jesus and you're the Israelite and Jesus died for you, black man, and so on. Exactly like that. You listen to any one of these groups out there online from the camps, Jesus, Jesus, and whatever, and they're using the Jesus stuff to hook you, even though they know Jesus is not sent by the Most High. Because all these camps who teach that, they very well know it. When you listen to how these brothers from these camps teach and the way they do all kinds of research and all kinds of things, you know that they can tell. You know it. But for different reasons, some are just plain hooked and can't change. Because, it's like when you love eating a certain thing, sometimes it's bad for you. The doctor is telling you, cut down on that, whatever. And you just know. But you're hooked to it, so you'll give up other things the doctor says. But that one, you just can't give it up because you just like that too much. And so they like the Jesus stuff and not giving it up. And after they've memorized so many New Testament scriptures and have built verses and have built their teachings around it and built their following around it, there's no way they're going to give that up. Others just won't give it up because they might lose followers, things like that, right? But now that I realize, after listening to it again, that, I need to, I'm just going to take it down and re-record it with the same points I'm making, but take out the New Testament verses and so on, and the Jesus verses, and just, clean it up and re-upload the newer version of that teaching, because I liked it, actually. It's about, our people, black people being enslaved and so on, being Israelites, and I probably have maybe 2 of those teachings, so that's fully dedicated to that topic. So it would be good for me to keep something like that online. So now, while I was making that video so long ago, I just couldn't see, because I was so caught up, so focused on us being the Israelites, and I finally found this out, that the Jesus part didn't stand out to me. It just didn't stand out to me. And so sometimes you can have something so right, but the next part right beside it, you're just not seeing it. And that's what's happening to a lot of us. We're so caught up on Torah stuff and we're the Israelites and looking into ancient Hebrew that we can't even read all right. And we're so caught up in that, and reading 15 new books a year and so on, that we're not seeing certain other things, and it happens to all of us. But when I look at it here, now I can see the problem with the wood. Is that religion connected to the wood, the Jesus religion, is what made us proselytes of Christianity, proselytes of Jesus. That made us follow him. And I'm going to show you that we were never worshiping this God of the Romans. I've told you in so many recordings with the history lessons that I did that the Romans weren't killing Christians in amphitheaters and feeding them to lions and so on. They were killing the Hebrews. And so the Hebrews fled into Africa. And I've showed you already in my lessons that the Roman government gave the Christians who were from different nations in the Roman Empire, gave them time, like a couple of days, to get out of the way and to go hide out of the way, because they were getting ready now to slaughter the Hebrews, because they were resisting and rebuking the Roman government and this Jesus stuff and so on, and they were rebuking the Christians and so on, because their Torah said do not worship any man, any god, and so on. And so they needed to finally do something and get them out of the way. So they ran. Now they ran from Jerusalem, ran to Africa, and ended up in West Africa eventually and other places there. They ran without Jesus. It's obvious when you read the history, they were not buying into this Roman God. So they ran without him, and there they sat in Africa without Jesus. So now, here's where it gets interesting now. It says, there you will, when you're in these lands, there you will worship other gods, wood and stone. If he knew he was sending his son to die on a cross for you 2,000 years ago, a cross of wood, and you're worshiping him, he wouldn't be telling you you're going to worship wood and stone. And even now, for the person who says he did send Yahweh Shai or Yahushua, but we just rejected him, you're still incorrect. Because look at the thinking. He wouldn't be using it as a curse that you are worshipping wood and stone. Because if you are supposed to worship the wood god Jesus because he was sent by the creator / God of Israel, then it is not a curse for you to get into the slave lands of Deuteronomy 28:6-8 and Deuteronomy 28 verse 36. It is not a curse for you to get into the slave lands and there you will be worshipping gods of wood and stone. That would be a blessing, because in your slavery in the slave lands under these European Christian Jesus worshipping people, slave owners, in your slavery you would have found your Messiah. So he cannot use that as a curse that you found the way. In your slavery you would have found your Messiah.
So he cannot use that as a curse,
that you found the way. Like Jeremiah 6:16 says, search, right, and ask and search and seek for the old paths. He would not put something like that as a curse in Deuteronomy 28 or Leviticus 26 to say that you're going to be cursed because your curse is going to show up because you're looking for the way, or because you found the way of Torah. Because finding the way of Torah is not a curse, that is a good thing. The God of wood. So to say he's putting the God of wood in verse 36 is letting you know that Moses, through the Most High, is pronouncing a curse upon Jesus' proselyte worshipping. So to say he's putting the God of wood in verse 36 is letting you know that Moses, through the Most High, is pronouncing a curse upon Jesus' proselyte worshipping. Hello. Tell that to the camps who are telling you that Yahweh Shai died to bring back the two kingdoms together, and then later on Judah and Ephraim will not vex each other. Tell that to the camp teachers who are telling you, and your Christian pastors who are telling you that Yahweh Shai and Yahushua is the Messiah. No, he's telling you it is a curse when you finally get there to the slave lands and you start to worship him. It is a curse. Bam. Oh man, I'm gonna have fun with this one. Listen, people. There you're gonna worship gods of wood and so on. He's also telling you at the same time, in these two verses, verse 36 and verse 68, that you were not worshipping this wood god before, or this this wood god. Because the things that Moses was rolling out at that time was about blessings and curses. We know the first part of Deuteronomy, like the first third and the other 2/3 of that chapter, Deuteronomy 28, is listing out the curses of things that will happen to them. Because they weren't going through all these curses. They were with Moses at the time and so on. They just came out of Egypt and so on. They were only looking forward to new blessings and to conquering Canaan, and good things were going to start to happen. So he's telling them in a future time, you are going to have these things happen to you. Confusion of faces and so on. They weren't having confusion of faces of face when these kings, David and so on, and Solomon is ruling over them, and they're on top, and the Israelite empire is running well and so on. There's no confusion of faces. They're smart, they're wise, they're on top, and so on, right? They're having victory after victory, things like that. But confusion of faces are going to come later on when they're wondering, what? Huh? Like a question mark, like, how did we get here? How did we fall so low? Blah, blah, blah. And how come we're so broke? And how come our children are dying and whatever? And all kinds of diseases and sicknesses coming. And the heaven is like brass and whatever. So it's a future thing. So he's telling you here, by mentioning this as a future thing, that in the future when you worship a wood god, you are actually being cursed. So Jesus is a curse. Yahushua is a curse. Yahushua is a curse. Yeshua is a curse. And all the other names that you want to make up for him, every one of them should be seen as a curse. So saith the Most High Power. Hello. So he's telling you now that your curse is going to be seen in this other way when you worship this wood god. Which then means when they ran from the Romans into Africa to get away from the fairy tale book or the fairy testament, from Matthew to Revelations, they were fleeing because they knew what their Torah said through Moses, and they did not want to be partaking in any wrong thing, to get no curse upon them by worshipping a wood connected God. So they ran. They resisted the Romans and then ran. So now you understand why the Israelites ran? Now you understand there was no Pentecost with tongues coming down from God? Things like that? And no 3,000 added to the church by Israelites? It's all a big fake story. It's a fairy tale. So now, if they ran into Africa and then through time later, we ended up going on the ships and coming to the West, and then a papal bull was issued to convert the heathens, because now Rome is calling us the heathens, right? Because they were mad at us. We slipped away from their hand in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago when we fled from them into Africa, and they only were able to kill some of us. We fled and we were able to keep our Torah. We had to run, but we still left with it. So they're mad, so they call us heathen, the same way we call them heathen when we're mad, right? But the truth is they are the real heathens. So they're mad, they're like, convert all these heathens. The papal bull went out for slavery, go and take all these indigenous people from these lands, because we went into different lands and so on, and convert them to Jesus' religion. Basically, we're going to now become proselytes of the wood god, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, or the Son God. Listen from this website that's called unethicalconversionwatch.org. Alright, so you can run a search for it on ethicalconversionwatch.org. And the title of this article is Papal Bulls. the crimes church/popes ordered kings to commit, published on October 17, 2014. So if you run all that and you see the date, October 17, 2014, then you should have the right one. Hear what it says. Okay, it says, two papal bulls, Romanus Pontifex and Inter Cetera, issued by the Catholic Church, changed the destiny of millions of people, and their indigenous lands became confiscated and turned into Christian empires. The doctrine of discovery, issued through the papal bulls, gave orders to the kings to carry out conquests and conversions and turn natives into perpetual slavery. The same church continues to ignore and neglects to acknowledge accountability for these orders. The laws in existence are all Christian. The Christian doctrine of discovery continues still. Many have heard of the word papal bulls, but very few know much about it. Not many would know that papal bulls were issued on human skins. And I read that before, a couple months ago. Usually that of a sacrificed child or a famous heretic put to death. And one wonders how anyone can be a heretic for speaking out against these things. Right? So even sacrificed children. So basically then, this bull was sent out to also say, get these heathens who are basically Hebrews and bring them into slavery, yeah. And these slave owners / plantation owners and ship owners and so on, they were all given orders to convert the slaves, the Israelites who got away slipped through their fingers from Jerusalem 2,000 years ago when they fled from the Romans, convert them now that we finally got them again to Christianity. Make them proselytes of Jesus would worship. Make them proselytes, convert them. It's interesting to note that a lot of slaves, like later on, the slaves, people would start to get into Christianity, but there were certain reasons for that. But at first, and a lot of times throughout it, we were resisting it and fighting it and so on because we knew it was evil and we wanted nothing to do with it. And we couldn't understand how such a God, a Christian Jesus God, could be doing these things to us and killing our children, sawing off our feet and stuff like that. They couldn't understand these things. So they wanted out of it and they resisted it badly and so on. They brought the slave owners, they brought slaves with different languages because we're scattered in different places and we're speaking different languages. And some of us they found when we were, like they found us living in these different lands, not only in Africa. And they brought us on ships and mingled us and took some that were under there and put them back on ships and sent them back to Africa and to parts of Europe, different places. They jumbled us up all around, right? Because they didn't want us to understand each other to find it easier to revolt and plan stuff and whatever. So they brought slaves with different languages, mingled the tribes together in order to squash tribal and religious practices and beliefs. Because the people would be more strengthened in that way, and they got to squash the religious beliefs as well and so on, and get rid of whatever you were believing before, in order to convert you and to keep you quiet and obedient, stuff like that. Now, of course, some of us still knew the Torah and so on, but others had picked up other religions wherever they were or formed their own and stuff like that, but they didn't know Jesus. In large part, they weren't worshiping Jesus. Now, you would have had certain ones of us who would have known Jesus as well, scattered, because you had African churches from Africans were running churches too, right? Because way back then, when we fled, Rome back then, who didn't call themselves Vatican at that time, were going into parts of Africa and threatening the bishops who were running churches to come under the power and leadership of Rome, to bow to Rome. Sometimes they would buy them out, sometimes they would just straight threaten them and kill them or whatever, right? So some of us would have picked up that, but in large part, we didn't know this Jesus stuff. We had our laws, and there's still some of our people left back in parts of Africa today who still continue with the Torah practices and so on, and had never changed from that, never moved from it. Now here's a question I want to ask you. If the papal bull is going out saying, convert the slaves to worshiping Yahweh Shai, as you would say, or Jesus, why do they have to issue a special order to convert the Israelites / the indigenous peoples that they picked up here, there, and wherever in Africa and other places, and in the islands and so on? Convert them to worshiping Jesus in this Jesus wood religion, if the slaves / the Israelites that they put on those ships and took to plantations were already worshiping Jesus because they already knew him? You see that? They made you a proselyte and forced you to convert to worshiping their Jesus because you weren't worshiping Jesus prior to slavery. Showing you that the conversion, the forced conversion, or they'll kill you and so on, or punish you more until you accept Jesus, happened because it was coinciding with the time of ships and slavery to run the whole fulfillment of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68 and 36. That you're going to go on ships, and when you get into this kind of slavery, you are going to worship gods of wood and stone. Why are they converting to Jesus by force if they were already worshiping Jesus in these islands and worshiping Jesus in West Africa and so on? Why? And some of our people are now worshiping Jesus in West Africa and other parts because they got it into us. And through indoctrination and so on, they put it into us. But it wasn't like that at first. Why are you running from Jesus when you're running from the Romans? Because Romans were managing Jesus or Yahweh Shai, and then you just run from them and say, well, now we're going to worship him. Then if that is the case where the Hebrews way back then, 2,000 years ago, just knew Yahweh Shai died for us, but the Romans just want us to worship him under their control and their guidance and leadership. So we don't want that. So we're just going to run from the Romans into Africa so we can worship Jesus on our own. If that is the case, then there cannot be any proper, filled with integrity, scriptural integrity kind of fulfillment to Deuteronomy chapter 28 that says when you get into this kind of slavery, you are going to start to worship gods of wood and stone. Because that's basically what it means. It's telling you that you weren't worshiping him before. And when I read of these islands, let's say, for instance, now, these Caribbean islands, they weren't worshiping Jesus. But the presence of Jesus worship came into history more and more, into even the islands, with the presence of these white European slave owners who came with instruction to bring slavery by force and to kill. And notice what they did? They came with missionaries to all these different slave places they were going to make slaves from. Why are they coming into African different parts with the Bible and down in the islands and so on, bringing Bibles on their ships to come and teach you on plantations to worship Jesus if you were already worshiping him? They bring in the New Testament to read to you, because notice they weren't trying to read any Old Testament excuse me, to teach you no Torah. They were teaching you New Testament so you could believe in Jesus. Why? Why would they have to teach you that? Because you never knew it before. You never knew it before. And even when they got down to places like Jamaica and some other parts of the Caribbean, they found like the Arawaks and the other kinds of Indians down there in the Caribbean. These Arawaks were not worshiping Jesus. They never knew no Jesus. Proof again telling you that Jesus wasn't down in Jamaica and in Trinidad and in Haiti and all these places. Jesus was not down there. They came with the European. You understand what I'm saying? That slavery brought the fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28:36. You're going to worship gods of wood. So they made proselytes out of us, making us worship in this Jesus religion because we were not worshiping Jesus at all. But Jesus' wood worship is a fulfillment of a curse from Deuteronomy chapter 36, spoken and given to the people by Moses as he received it from the Most High.